Hello everybody, Raw Space here. So if you have any questions, let me know. I will answer them to the best of my ability. Let's see. How much air do the astronauts have left? Well, the trip in the Soyuz can take up to a couple of days. I mean, usually that's on the trip up. The trip down is usually a lot quicker. It all depends on the timing and the trajectory, but they have plenty of oxygen to get up there. I mean, if they were stranded, you know, and they were unable to get to the space station, they would simply deorbit the Soyuz and they'd be fine. Will they be asleep at all on the way down? Nope, I don't think so. The trip down is pretty quick. They get in the Soyuz at, I'll just use Eastern time because that's where I am. They get in the Soyuz at, you know, about 9:30 p.m. and they land at about 4:30 a.m. So there's not time to sleep in there. They're not going to be able to sleep anyway. Now, if they were taking a trip up to the station that were extended, like a couple of days, then yeah, they would sleep. But there's not much room in the Soyuz. It's very cramped. But I mean, that's Russian space transport for you. Christina Koch has been in orbit for 328 days, which is, I think, about 40 days longer than the previous record set by Peggy Whitson for a single spaceflight by a woman. Chris V asks, will Cook be able to stand on her own? Christina is an athlete. She's a mountain climber, a rock climber, and she's very fit. And she's a tough cookie. So I think that if anybody is able to, I mean, I imagine she'll look pretty chipper when she lands. You know, there was, I remember a couple of landings ago, there was a pretty sharp contrast between Aleksandr Skvortsov, who was fairly young and quite fit, and one of the other astronauts who was not quite so young and not quite so fit. She looked pretty haggard, pretty roughed up by the journey down, and he looked, you know, just fine, all smiles. Now, I mean, they don't stand up when they first come out. I don't know. You know, they cart them off in wheelchairs and stretchers. I don't know if they can or if they're simply not allowed to. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll ask one sometime. Space Kitten, I plead the fifth. Yeah, unscripted. That's right. A little less concise, a little more silly humor. Spacesuits, yes, they wear. Well, they don't wear pressure suits, but they wear flight suits. You know, on their way up and on their way down. I mean, like if the Soyuz were to lose pressure and they were exposed to space, that would be. I'm not sure what exactly their suits are rated to protect them from, but I think that would be a real problem. Because they're not pressure suits. I mean, otherwise, you know, they would not be able to fit in the Soyuz. Good-looking honky, aka former adult entertainment star. Does space junk worry them? I mean, space junk is always a concern, which is why we have multiple organizations around the world that track it. Everything down to a few inches in diameter. You know, millions of pieces of trash, including, I mean, defunct satellites, which would be, you know, large objects, down to just pieces of debris from, I mean, there have been a number of satellite collisions over the years, and those have produced a lot of debris. There's also debris left behind from rocket launches and other things in orbit. But it's always a concern, but the big stuff they do track, and they make sure nothing's going to be in the way. But there are still potentially millions of objects like a centimeter or smaller that they can't track. And, that's why they have multiple layers of protection on the outside of the craft to kind of like Kevlar to absorb any potential micrometeor impacts. Do they see things not of this world? Well, if they look out the window and see the moon, that's not of this world. The sun isn't of this world. The stars are not of this world. They see all the same stuff we do, just with a little less twinkle, because there's no atmosphere up there, of course. Well, technically there is a tenuous atmosphere. There are still stray oxygen atoms that have, are floating around up there, but it's not visible. And it's enough to provide drag on the station, which causes the space station to lower its orbit by a few meters every day, but it's not enough that it would have any effect on your seeing. Racer X Nunyabi asks, in my opinion, should Starship go to the moon or Mars first? I think it should go to the moon first, but especially the propulsive landing and taking off again in a low gravity, low atmosphere environment, or in the case of the moon, virtually no atmosphere. There's a slight haze around the moon, but it's not substantial at all. Whereas Mars actually has, a couple percent of Earth's atmosphere. But they should try out these technologies and techniques close to home before they go sailing off into the great unknown. Leandro Pontus asks, why do these things always start when I'm going to bed? Blame that on orbital mechanics. Orbits don't change on a dime, and the ISS is whatever the word, prescribing the same circle again and again and again around the Earth, and the Earth is rotating underneath it. And so in order for the orbit to line up with their target landing zone, which is near Dzhezkazgan, Kazakhstan, which is northeast of Baikonur Cosmodrome, where they launched from, they have to depart the space station at a particular time, and they have to deorbit at a particular time in order to aerobrake through the atmosphere and then parachute down in the right location. Because think about it, the ISS orbits the Earth every 92 minutes. It's traveling about 17,500 miles per hour. If they don't get the timing right, that's a lot of distance traveled over a very short period of time. That's why the timing of space operations is so critical. Waltreza asks, when will Space Force start missions? I have no idea. I haven't been following Space Force. There's already there already has been for a long time a U.S. Space Command in the Air Force. But I know that a couple of months ago, the president nominated his, they created another position on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is something that doesn't happen very often at all, because they created a new branch of the military, the Space Force. And the president nominated his pick to head up that position at the Joint Chiefs. As far as Space Force operations. It's my understanding that they're going to ramp it up over a period of many months. And I'm sure they will reuse a lot of the same infrastructure and systems that are already under U.S. Space Command. Space Kitten Boo is not in my lap, but she's sitting nearby. She wants me to go feed her, so I'm going to have to take off here in a little bit, or she's going to start meowing incessantly. Good question. What is upcoming? Yeah, you may have missed a spacewalk. I'm not aware of any other spacewalks on the schedule at this time. The batteries that they've been swapping, or that they swapped out all year last year, and then on another spacewalk this year, I believe that is all complete. The batteries on the P6 truss that constituted many spacewalks, and then the 4 spacewalks to repair the alpha magnetic spectrometer that Luca and Drew did are completed. So I'm not aware of anything else pending at this time. But I mean, there's always going to be spacewalks. It's just a question of how dense the schedule is going to be. So after now, what's going to happen is at 12:15 a.m. Eastern, add 5 hours to that GMT. The live coverage begins for the undocking. So they're trapped in the Soyuz right now, but in 9, 10, 11, in about 2.5 hours, they're going to undock. And then at 3 a.m., which is 3 hours after that, they do their deorbit burn. And then very quickly after that, they come down and land in Dzhezkazgan, Kazakhstan. At 4:42 p.m. tomorrow, or today if you're east of me, so on Thursday at 4:42 p.m. Eastern, there's a Soyuz launch of the second batch of OneWeb satellites. So OneWeb is broadband internet constellation, which is similar to Starlink, except they're going to have a lot fewer satellites, whereas Starlink is targeting many thousands of satellites. OneWeb is targeting a few hundred with a maximum of a couple thousand. The first OneWeb launch was on a Soyuz, but it was an Ariane Space Soyuz from French Guiana in South America. This one is going to be launching on a Russian Soyuz from Baikonur. So that's 4:42 p.m. on Friday, Eastern Time. Then on Sunday, we've got 5:39 p.m. Eastern and Antares launch with another Cygnus supply module to the ISS. And then late that night at 11:03 p.m. Eastern, we have a very important launch. Unless it's been delayed, I'll have to check the times. They change constantly. An Atlas V rocket with the European Space Agency's solar orbiter, which is a very cool mission, very important, that is going to be put into a highly inclined orbit to the ecliptic. That is to say, if you think of the orbits of the planets in the solar system as a pancake, the solar orbit around the sun will be angled significantly from that, like maybe 40 degrees or something, which will allow us to see for the very first time the poles of the sun, which we've never had a direct view of before because we've always been looking at it from the plane of the ecliptic. Then on Tuesday at 3 a.m. Eastern is the rendezvous of the Cygnus module that launched on Sunday. And then at 6 a.m. Eastern is the capture of that same cargo module. And that's it. That's it for next week that I can tell. I mean, there could be other items I haven't added to the schedule yet. I've got to constantly update it because launches get scrubbed and delayed and sometimes moved forward and shifted around all the time. The ones that you can pretty much rely on the schedule for are the crew launches, the crew D launches, the Deorbits, like what we're doing now, and yeah, pretty much whenever crew is involved, the timing is quite reliable, unless something weird happens, like with the Soyuz MS-13 launch a couple of years ago that failed right after launch, and then they had to come down. But barring a contingency, crew launches are quite reliable with the schedules. Non-crewed launches, not so much. They change all the time. All right, back to the Chatteroony. Okay. Good-looking honky's full of questions. Could I donate my body to decompose in space for testing? You could offer it, but nobody would take you up on it. Probably not even the Russians. I, for one, I mean, not to be macabre, but I, for one, have always been curious as to what, because there's always been like movies portraying what happens to a human body in space, and our imaginations run wild, and I don't think anybody has a... Yes? All right, hold on. Okay. All right. It's terrorizing my cat. So my question would be, what really happens to a human body in the vacuum of space? And science has pretty good hypotheses for what would happen, but we've never actually put an actual body up there to see what happens, or a live... we've never, to my knowledge, never even exposed a live creature like a lab rat or whatever to the vacuum to see what would happen, because that would be cruel. And, we try to avoid being cruel. But the question remains, and I think ultimately it may be an important question to answer. How long can you really survive in the vacuum of space? I don't think you're going to freeze as quickly as people tend to think you're going to freeze. I don't think you're going to burn up as quickly as people think you're going to burn up. The main problem is the vacuum itself, because it's going to suck all the air out of your lungs. It's going to, your skin is not going to rupture or anything like that, but the vacuum is going to suck all the air out of your lungs violently. And, there's no way you can hold it in. And that will probably do some damage. Your open parts, your mouth, your eyes, things like that, all the water is going to evaporate away. There was an incident back in the 60s when an astronaut in a vacuum chamber, the seal on his suit failed, and he was exposed to the near vacuum of the chamber, and he said he felt the water boiling off his tongue, not because it was hot, but because of the low pressure. And then he passed out after a matter of just a few seconds. He ended up, recovering, because they were able to get pressure back in there quickly. But it's a big question that we don't have a definitive answer to, because, the way to tell for sure is to do it. It's not the sort of thing that anyone would that any agency would agree to accepting a volunteer for. Let's put it that way. Leandro Pontes says, hope it works out. I think he's referring to OneWeb and or Starlink. When there's thousands of these up in space, could make things a little more difficult for astronomers. Now, the Starlink satellites are going to be orbiting a fair bit higher than the space station, like maybe 150 kilometers higher than the space station. And they're they're quite small, and they're going to be quite dim. They're not, unless you're in a very dark location, which almost nobody is. You're not going to be able to see them when they're at their target altitude. It will cause a problem for astronomers, because while a oh shoot, I forgot the term, but the brightness, luminance, whatever. When with a brightness of 5, that's going to be very difficult for you to see with the naked eye, but that's actually quite bright in astronomical terms. And so, yeah, unfortunately, it's inevitable, because we are expanding into space. We are putting more business, more infrastructure up there, and it's like holding back the tide. I mean, it's going to happen, whether it's SpaceX or China or whomever. Somebody's going to be putting a lot more material up there. Incidentally, since we were talking about Starlink, there's supposed to be a good Starlink train view tomorrow morning, or in a few hours from now, actually, shortly after the end of this stream, that here in my location, unfortunately, I have nothing but clouds in the forecast for the next 2 weeks, so I won't be able to see anything. Kevin Swales asks, what is the sun like in space? We never get to see it on camera. In space, the sun shines 100% power. Well, true enough. I mean, you don't... Well, sort of. So there's lots of different things coming off the sun. There's photons across the whole spectrum, lots of different wavelengths, including the whole visible spectrum, and infrared, the ultraviolet. The sun gives off a lot of radio photons. Radio is actually photons, just like light is. It's just at a different frequency. So in space, the sun is going to look bright white because it's a full spectrum light. It gives off light across the entire spectrum. The only reason it looks yellow or orange on Earth is because the light is either being, like if the sun is low to the horizon, then the light is being, more blue light is being scattered away, and more red light is getting to us, and therefore it makes it look more yellow or orange. And there are also imperfections, contaminants, aerosols, soot, stuff in our atmosphere that can make it look dirty. But the sun is white. And we do get to see it on camera. I mean, not usually in ISS videos, because the cameras are exposed for the sunlit Earth, whereas the sun itself is thousands of times brighter than that and would completely overexpose the image. For example, in the Discover Epic images of Earth, which is a spacecraft that has been orbiting out at the Earth-Sun L1 Lagrange point about 1 million miles in the direction of the sun from where we are, looking at the sunlit side of the Earth all the time. Now, it went offline last year, but hopefully they'll get it back. But in any case, for about 4 years, it provided every 30 minutes or so an image of the full sunlit side of the Earth. And shoot, where was I going with that? Oh yeah. Strike that. That one would never see the sun, obviously, because it's always pointing away from the sun. It's Himawari I was thinking of. So Himawari is in geostationary orbit over Australia, basically. I mean the equator north of Australia. But so Himawari is positioned over the same spot on the Earth, and so it sees the day-night cycle every day, and it takes a picture every 10 minutes. And whenever the sun goes through that image, like, it doesn't happen that often, but whenever the sun happens to be in the image, those pixels are blacked out, because otherwise they would completely overwhelm the image. So it's designed to black out the sun because it's just so incredibly bright compared to everything else. Kevin also asks, how would a cat handle zero gravity? I imagine, well, it depends on the cat. Some cats are pretty chill. Other cats are not so chill. But, I mean, we've seen video of mice in zero gravity. They, put them in a cage, and they exhibited some funny behavior. They would run around in circles in the cage, like using their claws to pull themselves along on the wire of the cage. I mean, a cat is a fair amount more intelligent than a mouse, and I think they would probably be more freaked out because, they would be more aware of the weirdness of their situation. But, I don't think they'd die of fright or anything, but it would be very funny to see. Turns into a Slim Jim. Leandro Pontes says he gets the feeling the little Earth with eyes floating in space is fake. They actually called... So that was the zero gravity indicator on the first Crew Dragon test flight, the DM-1, when they sent Crew Dragon up to the space station. And they sent Little Earth is what they called it. I call it Globulus Prime, but I think that's a little more. I like that name better. But in any case, yeah, the Little Earth is not really floating above the Earth. That's a good perception. So good job. Marcus Jones, Starlink trains. If you ever want to see one, I mean, there's a number of websites you can go to that will tell you about, like, when the Starlink train or any number of different satellites, including the ISS, are going to be visible from your location. You put in your location, and it calculates, day, time, where it's going to come up on the horizon, where it's going to pass over, where it's going to go down. My favorite website for that is one that I've been using for almost 20 years, which is Heavens Above. I'll put the link in the chat. It's heavens-above.com. And I just typoed that one. There we go, that looks better. Praveen Garg asks, is NASA going to work with ISRO ahead after the Chandrayaan-2 failure? I imagine so. I mean, NASA and ISRO have collaborated on a bunch of different things. And Chandrayaan-3, I guess, is what they're calling because they want to do it again. They want to send another lander up there. I think they're calling it Chandrayaan-3. I don't offhand know if NASA is going to be involved with that or not, but I'm sure they wouldn't have any take any exception to being involved with it. ISRO's doing a lot of great work. Chris V asks, are the astronomers only worried about when the Starlink groups are still spreading out, like shortly after they've launched, before they've reached their... Because remember, even though... So there's... If you imagine a globe with lines of lines of longitude drawn on it. The lines of longitude, they join at the North Pole, and then they go out in different directions around the globe. So if you imagine those lines of longitude as orbits, and then you imagine a string of Starlink satellites around each of those orbits, when they launch, there's 60 satellites that are all together in a cluster, and then when they fly overhead, it's like, oh my gosh, what is that? Are they aliens? Because there's a whole string of lights moving overhead. It looks very strange. And we've all seen those videos. And some of us may be in person. But once they get spread out, those 60 satellites are going to be spread out across the entire world. So, yeah, they're not going to be bunched up together. Let's see. Just roughly guesstimating orbital time at 550 kilometers, maybe 100 minutes or something. I'm not sure how much slower the orbits are up there than at the ISS's altitude, where the orbit is 92 minutes. But let's just, for rounding's sake, let's say 100 minutes. So that's 100 minutes around, 60 satellites. So you're going to see a satellite, and that's, so 60 satellites in 100 minutes. So you're going to see a satellite every minute and a half, couple of minutes, in each orbit. So yeah, it's going to interfere with astronomers seeing, but it's not going to be as intense as when we see after they're first launched and they're in these thick trains. Okay, I am going to get something to drink. I'm going to feed my cat, and I will let you listen to music. Thank you.
You're looking at a live view of the Soyuz MS-13. For now, astronauts Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Aleksandr Skvortsov are on the International Space Station side of the hatch between this vehicle and the space station, but that won't last for long. Good evening and welcome to the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where the team is preparing now for the undocking of the Soyuz from the space station. That's coming up at 2:18 a.m. Central Time, but the departing crew, Expedition crew members that include Expedition 61 crew members, including NASA's record-setting flight engineer Christina Koch, European Space Agency astronaut Commander Luca Parmitano, and Roscosmos flight engineer Aleksandr Skvortsov, have already said their farewells and are now preparing to close hatches between the two vehicles, the next step on the checklist that will put them on course for return to Earth at 3:12 a.m. Central Time tomorrow.
200 days ago, exactly, I was taking command in the same spot, and I promised three things. I spoke of gratitude, I spoke of humility, and service. I know for sure that I have failed many times for the last two, humility and service, and my crew has paid the price for my failures. But for sure, I know that the gratitude that I felt on the first day has only increased during these past 200 days. For each and every one of you have taught me many lessons. Christina, your generosity and resilience in these past 3 expeditions has been incredibly inspiring. Jessica, you represent grit and confidence to me. Drew, you are selfless and an amazing support, and an outstanding friend. Sansanich, your love for your family and for your friends never stops and is always in your eyes. Oleg, your quiet professionalism reminds me of how important it can be to say only the right words at the right time. So 3 words when I started. I would like to add one word that I try not to abuse, and I use very sparingly. That word is pride. And I'm definitely not talking about myself, but I want my crew to feel proud of what they accomplished. There are many people on the ground, that are taking counts of what we have done, how many EVAs, how many hours of work, how many experiments, how many days we've spent up here. None of those are important. What is important is what you achieved. You as the crew made all of this possible. It's been your incredible, incredible dedication that has made it all possible. And for that, I feel very, very indebted. So my gratitude has only increased tenfolds or more. And with that gratitude in my heart, I would like to hope that we are leaving the space station in a better state than when we arrived. And with that, I would like to wish you all the best in the continuation of your staying here in Expedition 62. Now, Oleg, I give you the symbol of the authority on the space station. The key to the space station is yours. Congratulations, Commander.
Спасибо. Спасибо большое, Лука. Безусловно, для меня это большая честь и большая ответственность быть командиром такого крупнейшего космического объекта, как Международная космическая станция. Но я думаю, что, опираясь на командную работу нашего экипажа, мы успешно выполним все, что должны будем сделать по программе полета, по программе наших исследований. Конечно, как экспедиция 61, мы провели здесь больше 4 месяцев вместе. Это были как и рабочие дни, были совместные праздники. Все было интересно, все было очень здорово. И спасибо большое вам за это. За это прекрасное время, проведенное вместе. А сейчас мы, наш экипаж, желаем вам счастливого и безопасного пути домой. Thank you, Luca. So it's a great honor and great responsibility for me to be an International Space Station commander. But I'm sure that based on teamwork, we will successfully perform everything we will have to do according to our flight plan, according to our science program. We spent more than 4 months together as a one crew. It was an exciting time. We had weekdays, we had joint holidays. Thank you very much to you for this exciting time. And now we wish you safe and happy journey home. Спасибо.
Спасибо тебе.
With the close of Expedition 61, a lot of new records are being set since her arrival at the space station, with Nick Hague and Alexei Ovchinin on March 14, 2019. Christina Koch will have spent 328 days in space at the time of her landing. That's the longest single space flight for a woman. This mission also puts her at number 2 on the list of longest single space flights by an American, and with just this one flight at number 7 on the list for cumulative time in space by an American. For their part, Parmitano and Skvortsov spent 201 days in space for this mission, but both have been in space before. Parmitano will land today with a total of 367 days in space over 2 missions, giving him the most time of any ESA astronaut. And wrapping up his 3rd space flight, Skvortsov will have a total of 564 days in space, putting him at 15th on the all-time endurance list. But we know a lot of people are going to be very excited to see Christina coming home today, and we have gathered a few congratulation messages for her from various people at NASA and outside of NASA as well. We'll be playing those throughout the night, and we're going to kick it off with this one coming in from the Kennedy Space Center.
Hi, Christina. This is JC with the Veggie team. Just want to say it was great, awesome working with you over the past 300 days with the veggie grow-outs. We hope you like and enjoy salads when you get back. But again, we just want to say welcome back.
Hi, Christina. I'm Jess, one of the plant scientists on Veggie. It was a pleasure to get to work with you on the Veg04A and B studies. We really appreciate your dedication to the project, and the results that we received from space and here with our ground controls will help us to understand how to grow plants in space better and also know how to grow plants on Earth better. So thank you.
Welcome back. Go Veggie.
Getting our first footage of the night now from inside the Russian segment of the space station.
MCC, Moscow ISS on space to ground 2. Go ahead. I read you loud and clear on space to ground 2. And I see you. I request for you, Oleg, when you start the PAO event from MRM, could you please wear the headset just to make sure we avoid the situation when you're not able to copy? Are you talking about the event when we're closing transfer hatches? Yes, when you get all together and make sure you're wearing your headset. So I think, I see, I get it. So we're going to...
Они-то будут явно без наушников, чтобы с кем-то связь поддерживать, и мало ли какая информация поступит, чтобы кто-то был на связи.
Связь в каком канале будем вести?
СГ-2, из мимо только в СГ-2, поэтому вот так и оставляю связь. И камеру оставляю, и связь оставляю.
Нет, я возьму наушники с ПХО, то есть это будет СМ-овский пульт абонента.
Давай так, если будет СМ-овский пульт абонента, тогда СГ-1. Давай мы его сейчас тогда проверим сейчас сразу.
Да, хорошо, проверим, секунду.
Seeing Oleg Skvortsov here inside the Russian segment of the space station, where Soyuz MS-13 will be undocking from the Zvezda module later tonight. Skvortsov, of course, will be staying behind as he's now commander of the Expedition 62 crew, but he'll be involved in the work to get the Soyuz ready to leave today with his crewmates Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Aleksandr Skvortsov on board. And it looks like the Expedition 61 crew members are beginning to gather. You've got Christina Koch and Aleksandr Skvortsov there. And here comes Luca Parmitano. Getting some final farewells from the Expedition 60 crew members who will be staying behind. Saw first Andrew Morgan moving into the screen, and then Jessica Meir, and now Oleg Skvortsov. Few final pictures and farewell waves. Our last chance to see these crew members on this side of the hatch for this particular space flight. Next time we see them should be when they land back on Earth in Kazakhstan at 3:12 a.m. Central Time tomorrow morning. Still seeing some goodbye waves as they move to close that visiting vehicle hatch. Andrew Morgan and Oleg Skvortsov, they're working on the the International Space Station side of the hatch. We saw the Soyuz side hatch closed at 8:34 p.m. Central Time as the space station was flying about 262 miles above the Philippine Sea. Currently just about to skirt around the coast of Japan before reaching the northernmost portion of this orbit around the Earth. And there are the Expedition 62 crew members, newly named, waving to the cameras as they have just bid their crewmates farewell. Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Aleksandr Skvortsov. They're on the other side of that hatch you see here in the Poisk module on the Russian side of the space station. They closed the hatch on the Soyuz at 8:34 p.m. Central Time.
Go ahead and space to ground one. Go ahead, Oleg.
In Kazakhstan, a number of officials and vehicles are standing by in preparation for the landing. A total of 12 Mi-8 helicopters have been deployed to various areas to await landing. 8 are expected at the landing site southeast of Dzhezkazgan, and then 2 more will be ready about 250 miles away in the area where touchdown would occur if a ballistic entry occurred. You can see that planned landing site right here, again southeast of Dzhezkazgan. A final 2 helicopters will also loiter midway between the 2 areas. Of course, we're not expecting a ballistic entry, but we do always prepare for one. And also deployed for landing are 6 all-terrain vehicles and 3 Antonov airplanes that are serving as flying command centers. They'll have direct communication with the crew and will relay those communications back to Moscow. They all have a cold day ahead of them. The weather forecast at the landing site is for temperatures around 25 degrees Fahrenheit or about -3 degrees Celsius. Not exactly a warm welcome for the returning crew, at least in the literal sense. And unfortunately for those of us watching from home, the forecast is also calling for clouds. That means we may not see as much video of the capsule making its way down to the ground under parachutes as we're sometimes able to. But, as usual, poor weather conditions rarely deter Soyuz landings. We've seen them take place in the middle of snowstorms, in fact. So the landing team is prepared to quickly erect a medical tent at the landing site to get the crew out of the weather and keep them as comfortable as possible as they go through their regular post-landing checkouts. With the close of Expedition 61, a lot of new records are being set. Since her arrival at the space station with Nick Hague and Aleksandr on March 14, 2019, Christina Koch will have spent 328 days in space at the time of her landing, the longest space flight or single space flight for a woman of any nationality. This mission also puts her at number 2 on the list of longest single space flights by an American astronaut, and with just this one flight, number 7 on the list for cumulative time in space by an American. The other 6 ahead of her have multiple space flights under their belts. You can also see that she's gone quite a distance, 139 million miles. That is enough miles for her to have gone to the moon and back from Earth 291 times. Also made 5,248 orbits of the Earth. And a long list of other accomplishments there, including many arrivals and departures, and a number of spacewalks, 6 spacewalks in all, including the first, she made up one half of the first spacewalk to feature only women astronauts. As for Parmitano and Skvortsov, since their arrival on July 20th, they spent 201 days in space for this mission, but both of them have been in space before, so Parmitano will land with a total of 367 days in space over 2 missions, giving him the most time in space of any ESA astronaut. And Skvortsov will wrap up his 3rd space flight today, finishing this one with a total of 564 days in space, putting him at number 15 on the all-time endurance list. It's been a busy expedition for all of the crew, with a number of vehicles coming and going and a record-setting number of spacewalks as well.
Okay, guys, we are standing by.
Yes.
We have separation.
And as you can see, Soyuz MS-13 moving away from the space station now, and docking taking place at 11:50 p.m. Central Time, while the space station and Soyuz were orbiting 264 miles above Mongolia. View here from the Soyuz as it moves away.
On the docking interface? Yes, it's all clean.
The Expedition 61 crew officially on its way home now. Again, undocking took place at 11:50 p.m. Central Time.
We copy.
The crew members inside didn't all arrive at the space station at the same time, so the lengths of their stay vary. Luca Parmitano and Aleksandr Skvortsov arrived in the Soyuz that they're now taking home on July 20th and have been at the space station for 201 days. Christina Koch, on the other hand, arrived on March 14th with Nick Hague and Aleksandr
Skvortsov,
but stayed behind when they returned to Earth in October. She's called the International Space Station home for the past 328 days, longer than any other woman has ever lived in space. The view the crew view from the Soyuz as it moves away from the space station here. Again, undocking occurred at 11:50 p.m. Central from the space station's Poisk module. And this view, of course, from the International Space Station cameras. Great view of the Soyuz as it backs away.
And please monitor the thruster operation and maneuver.
Coming up, we'll have the first of the 2 separation burns that the Soyuz will be performing. An 8-second jet firing, taking place about 3 minutes after undocking.
секунд до включения.
30 seconds to activation. Beautiful.
Секунд.
10 seconds.
5, 4,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have DPO thruster activation.
This is that first separation burn. Again, the Soyuz jets will fire for about 8 seconds to ease it further away from the space station at just over a mile per hour.
The maneuver has started.
And the team here on the ground is reporting a good separation burn. Soyuz MS-13 is now moving away from the space station at a rate of about 1.2 miles per hour.
In 40 seconds now.
The next separation burn of the two will be coming about a little over 5 minutes after the undocking. That one will last 15 seconds and speed the spacecraft up by 3.5 miles per hour.
Standing by. We are in attitude. So everything is nominal. At 4:20, we're standing by for the PO, and you are getting the TV image? Yes, we are. Thruster activated. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thruster deactivated. Everything nominal. The burns are complete. And we have the line for the cycle end and accelerometer.
That second separation burn took place just as expected. Another good one. That one lasted 15 seconds and sped the space station up by 3.5 miles per hour. Still not moving too fast, but that'll certainly be changing coming up later on the Soyuz's journey. That with those two burns, the Soyuz should be on its way to a safe distance for the deorbit burn that will eventually drop it back into the Earth's atmosphere at 2:18 a.m. and put the crew on a return course for Kazakhstan landing at 3:12 a.m. Central Time.
Infrared sensor inhibit. So V17 command, yes, this is correct. V18, 1-8. SSVP is off, yes, that is correct. So V18 command, yes, in work. And manifold 1 is selected, correct? Yes. A11 is complete, yes? We're going to manifold 1. A11.
Here, the crew work through their checklist as they get on their way back to Earth. Again, landing at 3:12 a.m. Central Time tomorrow morning at this point.
Illuminated. Yes, it is. This indicator is illuminated.
They started their journey as they undocked from the International Space Station at 11:50 a.m. right on time and have since performed 2 good separation burns that are steadily moving it away from the International Space Station. You can just see at the top right-hand corner of this view the space station as it gets smaller in the background.
We have activated the rotational hand controller. Luca, please check for me.
Yes.
But don't hurry. Can you do it? Because I cannot reach.
Нужно проверить, что зафиксирован. Пожалуйста. Сейчас.
I have to check if it's secured. Yes, it's fine.
И параметры КДУ, Сан Саныч. Да, давление.
And KDU parameters, the pressure in the spherical tank number 1 is 179.
Шарбалон 2.
And number 2 is 165.
Топливо 400.
Fuel 166. No, 466.
Тут Москва, я Утес 1.
Moscow, this is Utese. We copied the parameters of KDU. And now G4 command in work. G4.
Да. Выдана команда Г4.
G4 command has been sent. Copy. So with that, we'll be getting ready for descent. Yes, we're getting ready for descent. Please switch to page 48. Switching to page 48.
Soyuz continuing to move further away from the International Space Station following that 11:50 p.m. Central Time undocking. This view coming from cameras on the space station as it tries to track the Soyuz as it does move away. Once again, inside we have NASA flight engineer Christina Koch, European Space Agency Expedition 61 commander Luca Parmitano, and Roscosmos flight engineer and Soyuz commander Aleksandr Skvortsov.
And good luck to you, Oleg, as well. Thank you very much, and all the best to you. Bye.
Давай поставим оповещатель.
So let's set the alarm. So did you set it already? And at what time? At 10:03:30. Okay.
Я тебе знаю, Сан Саныч, я уже знал.
Crew inaudible.
Я был уверен, знаю. Ну что, Кристина?
So, Christina,
Есть возможность отдохнуть.
now we have some time to just rest and relax.
Час.
We have 1 hour. Copy. MCC Moscow, this is Anton. Guys, we would like to wish you a nominal soft landing. Thank you for excellent work on ISS. We'll be missing you, and I will see you soon. Thank you very much. It's good talking to you. And hopefully I'll see you soon, and all the best to you. Good luck, guys, and it's good to hear you, and I'm glad that you are feeling great. Talk to you soon.
A few congratulations and well wishes there from the team on the ground in Russia as the Soyuz makes its way further and further away from the International Space Station. Once again, we're also collecting congratulation messages on social media for astronaut Christina Koch, congratulating her on her record-setting mission, 328 days in space, the most of any female ever. You can send those in using the hashtag Congrats Christina. We'll be looking for those on social media, and also playing some other congratulation messages that we've gotten from the team supporting her and the other space station astronauts on the ground.
Hello, Christina. On behalf of the Cold Atom Lab team here at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, we would like to express our gratitude and thanks for the exceptional and excellent support you have provided.
Thank you, Christina, and welcome home.
Now it's time to bring Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Aleksandr Skvortsov home. Welcome back to Mission Control. You're here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where the team here is getting ready and following along for the return of MS-13 Soyuz back to landing in Kazakhstan at 3:12 a.m. Central Time today. Preparations have been going on since they undocked from the International Space Station at 11:50, and they are now heading towards a 2:18 a.m. Central Time deorbit burn to get ready for that landing, which will bring them home just southeast of Dzhezkazgan, Kazakhstan, wrapping up a record-setting mission. This will be the last orbit of the Earth for the Expedition 61 crew members on board the Soyuz. For ESA's Luca Parmitano and Roscosmos's Aleksandr Skvortsov, who launched in this Soyuz on July 20th, this will be their 3,216th orbit. But for NASA's Christina Koch, who arrived on the space station on March 14th, she'll land today, having orbited the Earth 5,248 times and traveled 139 million miles, enough to have journeyed to the moon and back 291 times. You can see some of the additional accomplishments she racked up on her mission here. Again, 139 million miles traveled, in addition to, of course, setting records for the most time in space on a single space flight for a female, 7th all-time record for a U.S. astronaut on the endurance list, and 50th on the all-time for all astronauts.
Okay, copy. It is not illuminated, and command was not sent. When you send the command, could you please call us with a confirmation? One more question. So once we activate it, we're supposed to confirm it. Is that correct? Yes, that's affirmative. Okay, copy all. And of course I will do it as always.
As I mentioned earlier, the Soyuz will be about 20 miles away from the station at the time of its deorbit burn. That burn will start 25 seconds after 2:18 a.m. Central and finish 4 minutes and 39 seconds later at 2:23 a.m. The engine firing will act as a brake on the Soyuz while it's still 272 miles above the Earth, slowing it down by 128 meters per second or 286 miles per hour to drop it out of orbit. You can see a graphic animation here of what that deorbit burn looks like.
Yes, I'm clear. Aleksandr, you're not...
About 23 minutes later at 2:46 a.m. Central, when the Soyuz is at an altitude of 87 miles above the Earth, the vehicle's computers will command the 3 modules of the Soyuz to separate just above the first traces of the Earth's atmosphere.
Well, because
you can see what its descent as it moves on looks like. The orbital module on top is where the crew has a small amount of room to move around in during its flight to the station after launch, and the instrumentation and propulsion module on bottom, which houses the oxygen storage tanks, attitude control thrusters, avionics and communications and control equipment, will separate from the descent module in the middle where the crew is seated. It contains personally contoured seats for the crew members' use during launch, entry, and landing, as well as all the controls and displays necessary for critical flight activities. It also has life support provisions, batteries for re-entry and landing, and parachutes for soft landing rocket engines to slow the vehicle just before touchdown. The orbital module and the instrumentation and propulsion module will both burn up in the Earth's atmosphere, while that descent module continues on with Koch, Parmitano, and Skvortsov inside.
Eliminated. Compass.
3 minutes later at 2:49 a.m., about 62 miles or 326,000 feet above the Earth, the Soyuz will begin atmospheric reentry. The descent module's computer will orient the capsule with its ablative heat shield pointing forward to protect it from the heat as it begins to fly through the Earth's atmosphere, and the crew will begin to feel the first effects of gravity again. That will build through 2:56 a.m. when they'll experience the maximum pressure, or G-load, for the descent. They'll probably feel briefly 4 to 5 times the force of gravity.
Well, I don't see anything.
Just 2 minutes later, 14 minutes before touchdown, when the Soyuz is 35,000 feet above the Earth and traveling at a speed of about 514 miles per hour, Soyuz computer will command the first of a series of parachutes to deploy. 2 pilot parachutes will come first, one 6.7 square feet and one 48.4 square feet, and together they'll drag out the drogue chute, a 258 square foot parachute that slows the Soyuz down to 178 miles per hour. The drogue chute will also create a gentle spin for the Soyuz as it dangles underneath, which will help stabilize the capsule in its final minutes before touchdown. Then just before that touchdown, the drogue chutes will be jettisoned to make way for the deployment of the 3,281-foot main parachute. It'll continue slowing down the capsule to a speed of about 60 miles per hour. At first, the capsule will hang beneath it at a 30-degree angle to the horizon to help with aerodynamic stability. But after one of the 2 harnesses connecting the parachute to the capsule is severed, the Soyuz will right itself so that it's in a vertical position through touchdown. We're coming up on that deorbit burn in less than a minute now.
Copy. Cover is open. SKD orbital maneuvering engine cover is open. Stabilization mode is on. 30 seconds remaining prior to engine firing. Copy all. And I'm monitoring all the parameters. Switching to maneuver display. KDU combined propulsion unit parameters are nominal. Copy.
10 seconds now until the deorbit burn.
Yeah. 3.
5, 3. Standing by for engine firing. I confirm engine activation and firing.
Teams confirming that the deorbit burn started. That'll last 4 minutes and 39 seconds till 2:23 a.m. The engine firing acts as a brake to slow the Soyuz down while it's about 272 miles above the Earth.
Nozzle pressure 13.
That will drop it out of orbit and send it on its way to that landing just southeast of Dzhezkazgan.
Consumption 31 kilograms. Acceleration 14.1. 0.45. And the burn value is 14.1. Nozzle pressure 12.6. Spherical tank pressure 175. And 0.45, and the current pressure is nominal. 1 minute.
1 minute into the deorbit burn.
0.45, this is the acceleration. or Delta V, and prop consumption is 55 kilograms. 1 minute 15, 12 inaudible. This is the nozzle pressure, 0.45, 139, 45 inaudible. 1 minute and 30, 39.9, 0.45, prop consumption inaudible. 1 minute 45 seconds, nozzle pressure 12.6, spherical tank pressure 136. It is decreasing, acceleration 0.45 and 50.
2 minutes now into the burn. Again, we're aiming for 4 minutes and 39 seconds. This will begin slowing Soyuz down,
consumption 1 to 6 kilograms.
dropping it into the Earth's atmosphere and bringing it home.
2 minutes, 15 seconds, nozzle pressure 12.6, spherical tank pressure 122, Delta 0.45, and the current time is 64.4. 2 minutes, 30 seconds, 67.5, 0.46, prop consumption at 57, everything is nominal. Copy all? 2 minutes, 45 seconds, nozzle pressure 12.7, spherical tank pressure 170. All parameters are nominal, Delta V 0.46, and current time is inaudible.
3 minutes into the burn, 1 minute and 39 seconds left.
8.5, 0.46, this is the Delta V 189, this is the prop consumption value. And all parameters are nominal. Spherical tank pressure 107, 104, 0.46, and inaudible. 3 minutes 30 seconds, 93.7, 0.46, and prop consumption is also nominal. All parameters are nominal. 3 minutes 45 seconds, 12.7. This is the nozzle pressure, and 97, 94, 104.9.
4 minutes down now. We're hearing those crew reports that all is looking nominal.
4 minutes, 107.9, 0.46, 252. This is the prop consumption rate. Everything is nominal. 4 minutes and 11 seconds, nozzle pressure 12.8, 12.5, spherical tanks 1.8, inaudible, Delta V 0.4546, and 125.
5 seconds left.
284, this is the prop consumption value. Everything is nominal, standing by for engine activation. Deactivation. Deactivation confirmed. KSDBO valve is open, and the separation confirmed. Burn value is 128, 127.99. BO pressure is decreasing. Copy.
That deorbit burn took place and wrapped up exactly on time and went exactly as planned. That means that the Soyuz crew is definitely on their way home now. They've been using that burn to drop back into the Earth's atmosphere, slow down, and begin their descent, which will lead to that 3:12 a.m. Central Time landing just southeast of Dzhezkazgan in Kazakhstan. There will be a little bit of wait here now before the next big milestone. That'll come in about 23 minutes at 2:46 a.m., and that is when the Soyuz computers will command its 3 modules to separate.
Oxygen supply.
Crew members are in the center module. They'll get rid of the modules on either side of them. That will ensure that their heat shield is exposed and ready to protect them, and the parachutes will be able to deploy and slow down their descent once they are just a few minutes ahead of landing. Everything happening in sequence and on time so far, starting with today's 2:18 a.m. Central Time deorbit burn. Set the Expedition 61 crew members on their way for a 3:12 a.m. landing. They're currently right in the middle of the of that descent, coming up on the maximum pressure that the crew will experience, and in the middle of plasma interface. They'll be coming out of that in just a couple of minutes, and then shortly afterwards, we'll begin seeing parachutes deploy. And it looks like the team in the flight control team in Russia is seeing some video of the Soyuz making its way down. Already beneath that main parachute that will continue slowing the Soyuz down to 15.6 miles per hour.
$17.1, pressure 9 for number 1, inaudible, 15 for the second one.
We're working on getting a better shot of that video for you, but everything, there it is, and that is a great view of the Soyuz under the main parachute. Not as cloudy as predicted, it looks like. A very clear view.
No issues.
And this is actually the first time that we're getting HD video of the landing, so it's especially fortuitous that we're getting such a clear video, despite the cloudy weather predictions. Inside the capsule there, Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Aleksandr Skvortsov are just minutes away from their triumphant return to Earth. That should be taking place around 3:12 a.m. Central Time, so still another 10 minutes for them to slow down as they make their way toward the Earth. As they get closer, just about 2 seconds before they touch down.
There's up pressure.
So Skvortsov will get a notice from the computer to fire 6 solid propellant engines called the soft landing engines. Slow the Soyuz down to 5 feet per second, or about 3.5 miles per hour.
Inaudible. 0.5, 0.3.
Once again, this video coming from helicopters who've made their way out to the landing site, ready to meet them. About 8 helicopters are going to converge on the landing site with a number of support personnel from NASA and Roscosmos.
Meters right now. Standing by for the report. So we are not going to do anything else right now.
Slight correction to what I said there. This video actually coming from the team who arrived on the ground, ready to rush in to meet the crew once they do touch down. Helicopters also, of course, converging on the landing site to provide their support personnel as well.
What a ride.
3 minutes. Altitude is 33, inaudible.
Soyuz MS-13 continuing its smooth descent on a way to a 3:12 a.m. landing in Kazakhstan.
2,800 meters. This is the current altitude.
All looking good so far as it makes its way down. Again, a great view here. The first time that we've been able to get HD video from the landing site. These views coming from the team who've already made it to where we expect the Soyuz to touch down on the ground. Just a few more minutes now left in Christina Koch's record-breaking spaceflight. 328 days in space, just about to come to an end with this upcoming touchdown.
Soyuz crew inaudible. Sub pressure inaudible. Christina, yes, go ahead.
Soyuz MS-13 continuing to make its way down. Just a few more minutes, scheduled to touch down in 2 minutes actually, 3:12 a.m. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of video back. There it is. Inside Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Aleksandr Skvortsov.
Copy all.
Again, one of the last things to happen here will be the firing of the soft landing engines. That'll happen just a couple of seconds before the actual touchdown, when it's about 39 feet above the Earth. That's 6 solid propellant engines that are intended to soften the blow of landing just a little bit.
Altitude.
Soyuz also has seat shock absorbers that will be turned on by now, prepared for that landing. And the seats themselves are contoured to fit the astronauts individually to provide them the softest possible landing, although all reports are that it still is not quite soft.
Landing site.
You can see one of the helicopters that's been sent in to meet the Soyuz there in that view as well. And it looks like Soyuz MS-13 carrying Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Aleksandr Skvortsov has touched down 3:12 a.m. Central Time, right on time. And now, after 328 days in space and 139 million miles for Christina Koch, and 201 days in space, 85 million miles for Luca Parmitano and Aleksandr Skvortsov, the Expedition 61 crew is officially home. Again, that landing came right at 3:12 a.m. Central Time, 3:12 p.m. Kazakhstan time, following the deorbit burn that set it on its way at 2:18 a.m. Central Time. Now that the Soyuz has touched down, we'll begin seeing, hopefully, with this great view that we're getting, some of the helicopters begin landing around it, teams descending now that it has safely made it to the ground and they can move in. Number of landing support personnel will be moving into place to help the crew members out of the Soyuz. We should see them, as we usually do, in the chairs in front of their vehicle before they get whisked away to the medical tent for their post-landing checkups. It is, again, about 25 degrees Fahrenheit in Kazakhstan here at the landing site today, so that they probably won't to linger very long, but as soon as we are able to get you a view of them, we will certainly do so. Once again, for Christina Koch, this wrapped up a record-breaking mission, 328 days, the longest single space flight for a woman from any nation, and the 7th longest space flight for man or woman for U.S. astronauts. She launched on March 14th, 2019, and has been at the space station since, seeing a number of crew members come and go. Her current crewmates on board the Soyuz, Luca Parmitano and Aleksandr Skvortsov, arrived at the station on July 20th, along with Andrew Morgan, who stayed behind at the International Space Station. He, Jessica Meir, and Oleg Skvortsov will be there until April. During those 328 days in space, Cook traveled 139 million miles, the equivalent of 291 round trips to the moon and back. For Luca Parmitano and Aleksandr Skvortsov, they spent 201 days in space, made 3,216 orbits, and traveled 85 billion miles. Although they are back on Earth, their journey is not quite done. They'll need to make their way for Skvortsov back to Star City. Luca will be traveling back to Europe, and Christina, of course, will be coming back to the United States. They've got a little bit more journey ahead of them. But first, we'll wait for those landing support crew members to make their way to the capsule and begin getting them out. We are seeing a lot of your congratulations messages come through for Christina Koch using the hashtag Congrats Christina. Those are great, and we really appreciate them. And of course, we were also ahead of her landing, collecting some congratulation messages from the teams that support her here on the ground. We've got another one coming up here from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California.
Hey Christina, Matt Bennett here. This is OCO3 Project Manager Ralph Basilio and Project Scientist Dr. Anne-Marie Eldering. And we just want to say thank you for all your interest in the OCO3 project and all the beautiful pictures that you took of OCO3 in action on the space station. We're really glad you're home safely. From all of us here at JPL, welcome home!
It is certainly not too late to get your own congratulation messages in, so keep those coming using the hashtag Congrats Christina. We're standing by as we wait to hopefully be getting some video from the landing site pretty soon. We're still waiting to receive video from the landing site, but we do have personnel there on the ground who are ready to send us in some reports. One of them is NASA spokesman Rob Navius. Rob, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can, Bradley. A remarkable scene out here. A journey roughly the equivalent of 291 round trips to the moon for Christina Koch at an end. The Soyuz MS-13 stopped the landing. It is upright, and they're in the process of beginning to put the erector to a ladder on top of the hatch. About 100 yards away. Snow on the ground. And, more likely
Rob, I think we may be missing some of what you're saying there. It sounds like you said that Soyuz did land upright. They're getting the ladder into place, and hopefully soon we'll be getting the crew members out.
That's good, Randy. It is the MS-13 landed upright. They'll be erecting a ladder and begin the process very quickly here. The scene here is almost surrealistic in the middle of this desolate area of south-central Kazakhstan, and on the ground. All of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters were on the ground within 4 minutes of touchdown. Just a remarkable pinpoint landing for Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Aleksandr Skvortsov.
We saw some great video of it as it was coming down. No clouds in the way, thankfully. But we don't have any video of the scene there at the landing site just yet, so we're still waiting on that.
All right, well, hang in here with me. The ladder is now being put around the top of the spacecraft. That will set the stage for the opening of the hatch by the RSC Energia personnel there. The first one's on the scene. Medical personnel consisting of NASA flight surgeon, European Space Agency flight surgeon, and Russian flight surgeon and respective nurses. They are all ready to attend to their respective crew members. This whole process will take just a few minutes before each of the crew members is extracted from the Soyuz descent module. They'll be put in chairs. That's the current plan, although it's pretty cold out here. Temperatures below freezing in the mid-20s Fahrenheit. So how long they actually remain in chairs remains to be seen before they would be brought into that inflatable medical tent for initial medical testing.
Yeah, I imagine they won't be wanting to linger any more than they have to, ready to get inside that medical tent as soon as they can. We're getting.
Let me know when you're if you're seeing your first imagery from the landing site. You're seeing some of the RSC Energia personnel and the search and recovery forces. They will begin the process momentarily of opening that top hatch. The Soyuz commander, Aleksandr Skvortsov, in the center seat of the descent module. He'll be the first to be extracted, followed in all likelihood by Parmitano and Koch.
No video for us yet, so we're depending on your description for a little while longer.
All right, as is typically the case, the flags of Russia and Kazakhstan have been planted in a perimeter around the landing site. Again, just a very surrealistic scene. In a foot of snow in early February, the crew that just hours ago was in the comfort of the International Space Station back on Earth, Christina Koch having completed 328 days in space, the second longest U.S. spaceflight in history.
You've seen a number of these landings up close and personal. Are you able to compare this to the other ones or rank them in any way?
Yeah, I would tell you that the speed in which our helicopters were on the ground and our ability to see the Soyuz under the chutes in the final minutes before the soft landing engines fired and touchdown occurred, you never get tired of it. It's just a remarkable scene. The Soyuz itself, as is always the case, its outer hull scorched by the heat of reentry, but the personnel here working very quickly to get that top hatch open. The ladder has already been erected, and we're expecting to see the first items removed from the Soyuz vehicle very soon, followed by the crew members one by one.
And I suppose Skvortsov will be first?
Yes, the Soyuz commander is always the first out because that makes the way clear for the other crew members who flanked him during reentry. Luca Parmitano, flight engineer number 1 to his left, Christina Koch, flight engineer number 2 to his right. They'll be extracted after Skvortsov is, but they have to get that Soyuz commander out first to clear the way for the extraction of the other crew members.
We're still waiting to see more video, but in the meantime, we are hearing from a lot of people who are watching on social media sending in their congratulations to Christina using the hashtag #CongratsChristina. So we hope that you're able to pass on those congratulations when you see her and her crewmates.
We will certainly do that, Brandy. As I'm sure you have reported earlier in the day, once the crew has completed about an hour and a half worth of medical testing in that nearby tent that has already been erected, they will be flown in 3 individual helicopters, a 2-hour, 10-minute helicopter flight back to the northeast of our landing site here, to the staging city of Karaganda, where they will undergo a brief period of additional medical testing before Koch and Parmitano board a NASA jet to head for Cologne, Germany. Aleksandr Skvortsov will board a Gagarin cosmonaut training center aircraft to fly back to his home in Star City, Russia. It is in Cologne where the European Astronaut Center is located. Parmitano and other ESA personnel who will be on the NASA plane will be dropped off. They'll be greeted by ESA VIPs at the Cologne airport. It's actually a military airfield that's adjacent to the commercial part of the Cologne-Bonn airport in Germany. Christina Koch will undergo some additional medical testing. That was the planned protocol in Cologne before she reboards the NASA jet, and we will head back to Houston.
And amazingly, the trip from space to Earth takes less time than the trip for the crew members back to their own homes.
Exactly. I will tell you that we heard earlier today, about 2 or 3 hours ago, that after the crew had closed the hatch to their Soyuz spacecraft, leaving Drew Morgan, Jessica Meir, and the new ISS commander, Aleksandr Skvortsov, behind, that Jessica Meir reported, it sure feels lonely up here. But that won't be the case for very long. Just a couple of months from now, another Soyuz launch with Chris Cassidy, Nikolai Tikhonov, and Andrei Babkin will be staged from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, which is to the southwest of where we are at the moment. That launch scheduled for April 9th to re-up the station crew, at least for an 8-day period, to a full 6-person complement.
The hugs on the orbit that we saw during the hatch closing, and also the words from Luca Parmitano as he was handing over the command of the station to Oleg Skvortsov were all very touching. You could tell the crew, you could see that they were going to miss each other, and they've also been tweeting as they led up to their departure about that, how much they'll miss all being together in space. Still no video on our end, unfortunately, Rob.
I'm sorry, Brandy, are you receiving video yet?
No video yet here.
Okay, you should be getting it any time now. The crew was very close, particularly Jessica Meir and Christina Koch. They had trained together. They were classmates in their astronaut class several years ago, and of course conducted a series of all-female spacewalks to set yet another mark in history, as if there weren't enough records that were being set during the course of Expedition 61, which saw a record 9 spacewalks totaling 61 hours, dead even. Very ironic for those 9 spacewalks during Expedition 62 way.
They've certainly earned a rest after all that they did in space. I'm sure they're eager to get home at this point.
Yeah, the thing that Andy, is the precision with which the Russian search and recovery forces and the support personnel execute one of these landings and subsequent recoveries. We are actually looking off beyond a series of Russian Mi-8 helicopters to some local villagers that are riding native horses in a foot of snow here in the south central steppe of Kazakhstan. You just never know, Randy.
Can't wait to get the video. It sounds like it's going to be really good.
I mean, it's just amazing. There's a bell out here, no wind, temperature in the mid-20s, and natives riding their native horses, just a little bit of a stroll on local horses on Thursday.
Are they making any progress?
The RSA Energia personnel are in the process of beginning to gather up the cords for the main parachute that will be folded up and returned for post-flight analysis. The top hatch has now been opened, by the way, to the MS-13 spacecraft. The large orange and white parachute that you're accustomed to seeing for landings, and here at the landing site itself during the descent of the Soyuz spacecraft, that parachute is going to be gathered up and taken back for engineers to do post-flight analysis on. It worked like a charm. Without any presence of wind here today, the Soyuz landed upright, which is the preferred orientation, although dragged on its side. There, of course, is another hatch available for the crew to be extracted. We should be seeing Aleksandr Skvortsov being pulled out of the Soyuz spacecraft here almost any time now. The chairs that they will be placed in with very warm blankets to cover them, those have been set up. So we'll be expecting to see the 3 crew members here before long, and now they're in the process of pulling the first crew member out. And indeed, Aleksandr Skvortsov, the veteran Soyuz commander with more than 500 days in space now on 3 space missions, smiling broadly. A whole flank of photographers and television cameras here at the landing site. He is resting now on the edge of the Soyuz spacecraft and will be swung around and assisted down the ladder and be brought into his chair for a few minutes to get his equilibrium back, and hugs to some of the RSC and Energia personnel in the process of removing him from his Soyuz spacecraft.
And it looks like they are starting to get to video at the Russian Flight Control Center. So hopefully we will be seeing it for ourselves soon. We're seeing a smaller version of it right now.
Skvortsov is out of the spacecraft. He will be helped down the slide. That's part of this ladder apparatus at the top hatch of the Soyuz. He's waving, smiling broadly, thumbs up, and he is now back on terra firma.
And we are seeing that live now, Rob. Thanks so much for keeping us informed while we waited. We got it just in time to see his smiles and thumbs up.
Very good. We'll hang here with you, Brandy, and provide any additional details that we might be able to do. I'm going to try to reposition myself so I can get a better view of Christina Koch once she comes out of the Soyuz.
Aleksandr Skvortsov certainly looks like he's glad to be home, pumping his fist into the air, shaking hands, lots of well-wishers on hand. Once again, on this mission, Aleksandr Skvortsov racked up 201 days in space, but he's adding that to what he totaled on previous space, two previous space flights, now to come up with 546 days in total that he has spent in space over those 3 space flights.
And Brandy, if I might interrupt, Christina Koch, you're a record holder. She is out, thumbs up, and a huge smile.
Yes, we are seeing it real time. She definitely looks glad to be home. Again, 328 days that she's spent in space since her launch on March 14th.
Cook now is going down the slide, Brandy, and she'll be brought to her chair.
All smiles and looking like she's feeling great.
Still hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you, Rob.
Okay, I'm going to make my way over to Christina.
Нормально.
Christina, welcome home.
Current record holder for longest single space flight by a woman of any nationality, and seventh most space flight time accumulated by an American astronaut.
Randy, they just scooted her chair just a few feet back from where it was to give the group of photographers and television cameras here a little bit more room to position themselves. She's now donned sunglasses, as undoubtedly you can see, and we're awaiting the extraction of Luca Parmitano, who has spent more days in space than any other European Space Agency astronaut.
We're standing by for that. We're still, at the moment, seeing a view of Aleksandr Skvortsov, still looking like he is feeling pretty good and happy to be home. Still giving thumbs up.
Christina Koch, by the way, Brandy, just looked around at the large group of folks here to greet her and her crewmates, and she uttered the word, wow. Very impressed and very happy to be breathing this nice cold air on this Thursday afternoon.
I think a lot of people saying wow about her as well.
Big thumbs up for Luca Parmitano if you're seeing him being helped down the slide. He is no stranger to Soyuz landings, of course. And Cook and Skvortsov are giving a big fist bump to their teammate, number one.
Looks like you've got 3 happy astronauts there. Glad to be back to the ground.
Я голос Лёша спиной почувствовал.
Luca Parmitano, big smile, just pointed at me and exclaimed, "Who will back on Earth?"
As you pointed out, he has most days in space of any ESA astronaut at this point, with his 2 space flights totaling 367 days in space. That includes the 201 that he just returned from.
Trio all-terrain is one of each crew member pulled up to the perimeter of the landing site. Once the crew members are finished in the medical tent, they will be driven from the medical tent to their respective helicopters, getting the journey back to the staging city of Karaganda, as we mentioned earlier.
We're seeing Aleksandr Skvortsov right now on the phone. I assume probably talking to some family or friends who are watching from a distance. Although it looks crowded there at the landing site from this view, if you were able to turn the camera around, it would be just empty space all around them. So they are really in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, this landing site, which is typical in its latitude and longitude for Soyuz landings, nominal Soyuz landings, which of course this one was, it's wide open spaces. I'm just struck by the natives who came out to watch this landing on horseback, who are just a few yards away from us here. Totally extraordinary.
That's a lucky chance for them, getting to see the welcome home.
Ватикау находится в контейнере.
Randy, I'm expecting that it will be just a few more minutes before they start to carry the crew members one by one to the nearby medical tent. I'm going to wait here for a little bit, and we'll let you know when that process begins if you are not already seeing it. I'm just standing probably 15 feet away from the Soyuz spacecraft. Some of the early return items are being unloaded from the top hatch that the crew was extracted from just a few minutes ago. I'm actually going to take a stroll over here to take a closer look at the natives on horseback. Local Kazakh residents. They're talking to some of the engineering personnel who are at the moment from working the parachute, putting it in the right configuration. They have a dog with them, so a little bit of nature mixing with human spaceflight out here today.
Now, again, you've been out there a number of times. Is that a first for you?
I've never seen this, Brandy. It's remarkable. I mean, there are small villages in the close proximity to this landing site, not immediately within a few feet, of course, or a few miles, but for some amazing reason, these folks know when landings are about to occur, and in this world of GPS and other capabilities, they pretty much know exactly where a Soyuz spacecraft is going to land.
I would come out to see it if I were nearby as well.
The other thing that's quite remarkable is the fact that this cold front that brought about a foot of snow to the region in the last few days, it blew through right on time, and as predicted, when we left the staging city of Karaganda earlier this morning, it was very, very gray, overcast, and it was snowing to the northeast. As soon as we got airborne in the helicopters, however, we could see clear skies as far as the eye could see, and it has turned into a gorgeous winter day.
We're seeing Skvortsov eat an apple right now. I know that Christina Koch was craving chips and salsa. Do you think that's in her near future?
No question. There are enough chips, salsa on the NASA plane heading home to accommodate several Mexican restaurants back in Houston. I will tell you, no shortage of her favorite delicacy on the way home.
Everyone's still looking happy, lots of smiles.
They're all happy. Of course, they've gone into the process of the traditional group picture. The crew very much in the fresh air out there.
Sounds like we lost Rob Navius there, giving us the play-by-play from on the scene in Kazakhstan. But as you can see, we've still got the video, so able to see as the activities as the activities continue, that they should be preparing to move the crew into the medical tent sometime pretty soon.
Сереж, справа заходи, я съем. Сейчас.
Hey, Jill. Yeah, I've been practicing that landing on the. Thank you. Oh man, it was beautiful. The landing. Hello, thank you. You look amazing. I'm so overwhelmed and happy right now. Oh my gosh, there's an animal. You see the doggy? Yeah, the dog came to say hi. Horses also with you guys on.
When we go to the tent, we'll probably kind of bunch up the blankets.
My blanket train.
Looks like that move to the medical tent is imminent, starting with Aleksandr Skvortsov. The landing support personnel will carry the crew members into the tent just so that they don't have to risk moving on their own when their equilibrium may still be adjusting from their reintroduction to gravity.
Вон второй пойдет. Быстрее. Вон второй пойдет.
Rob, no questions for me? Come on, man, you're disappointing me.
Отходите, отходите. Два. Один слева, другой справа. Вот, все, 4 на месте. Вот еще две. Подходи, так 165.
Не можешь.
Saw a view there of Aleksandr Skvortsov disappearing into the medical tent. Again, they've got several post-landing checkups they'll go through. And we also now have back online with us Rob Navius, who's there on the scene. Rob, can you hear us?
Yes, Brandy. Off of wild horses, as they said in Kazakhstan, couldn't keep me away, so I'm back with you. Skvortsov is now in the medical tent. Luca Parmitano is now here. And he is starting the short ride, being carried by Union Space Agency and Russian personnel to that medical tent. Christina Koch will follow in very short order.
Yes, we're seeing Luca Parmitano on his way now.
And Christina Koch is now being hoisted by NASA and Russian personnel. And she will be brought into the medical tent to begin her medical testing. We mentioned earlier, about an hour and a half to complete. So we'll turn it back over to you, Brandy, in Mission Control in Houston, and we'll be talking to you later after we begin the trip back to Houston.
Thanks so much for all the great descriptions, Rob. We really appreciate you calling in, and please pass on our congrats and welcome homes to all three of the crew members.
Well, we will do that, Brandy, and have a good rest of the day. Another successful space station mission in the books.
Indeed. Thanks again, Rob, and we appreciate that. Your play-by-play. It's been great to have. And there is Christina Koch making her own way into the medical tent, still with smiles and thumbs up. All the crew members seeming like they're feeling pretty well for having spent 201 to 328 days in space. The checkups that the crew members undergo inside the medical tent do take a while, so that will be the last that we see of them for our landing coverage here today. Hopefully we'll be able to get you some video as they begin making their way home through video files coming up, but that is probably the last we'll see of them in Kazakhstan. You can see there some of the nearby residents who have come out to see the ceremony, the welcome home. And a great view of the Soyuz MS-13 here, still being unloaded. They'll be getting a lot of science experiments and data off of the spacecraft. It'll be making its way home alongside the astronauts.
Теперь надо вооруженников сейчас продумать, как они подсыпят.
Я тебя остаюсь, чтобы ты меня в гостинице.